You are listening to the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. Follow us by visiting MikeRileyNow.com. Yeah, and welcome to the Mike Riley Now podcast here on the Young Angels of America Network. I am your host, Mike Riley. Welcome to the show, everybody. Today is indeed Thursday, December 22nd, 2016. This is our last show of the year. So we want to thank everybody for tuning in. We're going to have we're not going to have like a real Christmas show. I don't do Christmas shows. Maybe when we do the live show, we'll have like a Christmas special and we'll like give everybody gifts and whatnot. But we'll kind of get Christmassy and talk about the new year and whatnot. But anyway, I want to start by, first of all, of course, introducing my co-host. Tonight, we don't have Charlie or Cam, but we do have Brooke in the house, who is the executive director of Young Angels of America. So, Brooke, welcome. She's going to be co-hosting tonight. Hey, Brooke, how you doing?
Thanks, Mike.
Of course, just make sure you talk into your mic.
Well, I hope I have something to say.
I'm sure you will have something to say.
If I did, that would be the first time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know what? Since this is our last show of the year, we're going to do kind of a anything goes kind of day today. So we're not going to really kind of surface around one specific topic per se. But we definitely will be covering a lot of things that are kind of going on right now in the world. So yeah, we definitely are going to have a pretty good show. And we're going to end by saying, happy, New Year and Merry Christmas to everybody in the whole bit. So I know I mentioned that earlier, but I'm kind of a Christmassy person, so I'll mention it again.
I got you a present.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did.
Well, I guess it's not a present if I tell you what you got me.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm pretty sure it's just some draws. But first, I always want to start out by giving a big shout out and a big thank you to all of our new subscribers out there who are tuning in via iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker. We're also on Google Play and, also on, what's the other one? SoundCloud. Yeah. So thank you, everybody who's been tuning into the show, who's been leaving feedback. Make sure you log on to MikeRileyNow.com and subscribe. Log on to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. The handle is at Mike Riley Now, so you can definitely find me there. And also make sure you log on to YoungAngelsOfAmerica.org and check us out there too. And make sure that you donate and try to keep this show going if you like it. We really appreciate it. So yeah. And tell all your friends about it, too, and tell them to subscribe. So today's an Anything Goes Thursday today. So I'm going to be kind of jumping around a few topics that we can kind of talk about, kind of wrap up the year. 2016 has been a very, very, very interesting year. I mean, it's probably been, every year, I guess, is more interesting than the other. Well, there's been some dull years. What was a real dull year to you, Brooke?
I think maybe like 1958 wasn't that exciting to me.
50? I wasn't around in 58.
Yeah.
I was around in 85, if you want to twist it around.
Yeah, I think the 90s were kind of boring. No?
Nah, the 90s were real cool. Yeah, you had like Tupac and Bill Clinton and stuff like that. This
year's been, I'd say, very different. On a scale of 1 to 10, this was a 10.
Yeah, this year was definitely
interesting wise.
Yeah. And if you're out there listening in TV land, tell us how your 2016 was. There's been like this, John Oliver had this big thing called, Fuck You 2016. And I was going to throw a New Year's party called Fuck You 2016. But I'm doing something else for New Year's this year, so we're not going to do that. But 2016 was kind of a heavy year, especially in the real world. I mean, there was a lot of things that happened in sports and entertainment, and a lot of things that happened in whatever other categories, I guess, popular culture. But in not necessarily the real world, because all those things are, of course, products of the real world. But I would say that the political world, the governmental world, was just shaken up a lot this year. Obviously, because of the election of Donald Trump. I should be saying Hillary Clinton.
Nice.
Freudian slip. But the election of Donald Trump has just shaken up, I think, 2016 in a way where it's just been kind of weird. Surreal, I think, is the best word to describe it. And amongst all this, 2016, a lot of people have said that this is the first time the United States of America has elected a fascist. And that word's been getting thrown around a lot these days. I mean, you've been hearing the word fascism left and right. Oh my God, we elected a fascist. We elected Hitler or the next Benito Mussolini or whatever.
Mike, did you know that some of these young alt-right groups have a haircut called a fasci?
Really? A fasci?
A fasci, F-A-S-H-Y. It looks like a little, sort of a combination between a Hitler do and a Trump comb-over. It's really freaky.
That is crazy. Are you're being honest about this?
I'm being totally honest.
My God. Well,
Look
I need to get me a fasci because I can't grow the mustache though. So
you'd have to grow some hair first.
Yeah, no, that's not happening. That time has come and gone, unfortunately, in my life.
Yeah.
Oh well. But anyway. But that is nuts. I did not know that. But just this kind of like talk about fascism that's been getting thrown around left and right. And on the left, a lot of people are saying, I've been hearing at least that a lot of people are really, nervous. There's a lot of different ethnic groups and a lot of different multicultural groups who are just kind of saying that the election of Trump has kind of gotten them frightened because they see something kind of reminiscent of what was happening in Nazi Germany in the 1930s. And we all know the old saying, the first person who brings up Hitler loses the argument. And the first person who makes that Hitler comparison really isn't speaking from a place of logic or speaking from a place of reason. They're just referencing who we would consider to be the most, horrific person in human history.
Who says that? Who says that?
Who says
whoever brings up Hitler?
It's kind of a common, I guess saying. If I've heard it tons of times arguing politics with people, because during the Obama days, you heard a lot of people on the right kind of comparing Obama to Hitler, saying things like socializing medicine and trying to bring in socialism and things like that. Because Hitler, for all intents and purposes, was a socialist for the most part. I mean, he did build the Autobahn.
Yeah, but I mean, starting in the 20s and 30s with these little dribs and drabs of kind of coded information that ended up being really blatant and killing people, it's sort of reminiscent to me of Germany more in the late 20s and early 30s. What's going on? Well,
it's kind of funny you bringing that up. I wanted to read this article that was written by the Washington Post, but it's really more talking about there's this author who I guess she lived through Nazi Germany or something like that, or she was around, but she wrote this book called The Origins of Totalitarianism, and her name is Hannah Arendt. I think I'm sure. Well, we all know me in names, so I'm butchering it. But Hannah Arendt, she wrote this book called The Origins of Totalitarianism, and this has been getting a lot of pickup on social media, like places like Twitter and Facebook and stuff like that, because the book draws so many comparisons to the things that are kind of going on today. I'll read off some of this for you here. 2 world wars in one generation, separated by an uninterrupted chain of local wars and revolutions, followed by no peace treaty for the vanquished and no respite for the victor, have ended in the anticipation of a third world war between the 2 remaining superpowers. In this particular situation, we're talking about, and this is in the book, and this book was written a long time ago. It was based on things that happened in the 1940s. I mean, I really don't know how long ago the book was written. Somebody might want to fact check me on that. But the 2 remaining superpowers right now, of course, us and we're not the remaining superpowers, but us and China, right? We're like the big showdown, right? And there's been all this talk about Trump disrespecting China, and even today, he went on a Twitter rant about increasing our nuclear capability. He said we should increase our nuclear capability until the rest of the world, has common sense about nukes. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but it was something along those lines. That's kind of like the whole, in order to stop guns, we should have more guns. Anyway, this goes on to say, or in order to stop gun violence, we need more guns. But this moment of anticipation is like the calm that settles after all hope has died. Under the most diverse conditions and desperate circumstances, we watch the development of the same phenomena. Homelessness on an unprecedented scale. Rootlessness to an unprecedented depth. Never has our future been more unpredictable. Never have we depended so much on political forces that cannot be trusted to follow the rules of common sense and self-interest. Forces that look like sheer insanity if judged by the standards of other centuries. This was written in this book, and also too in this book, she draws so many comparisons to basically people kind of ignoring facts. And we had a big talk about this last week on the show, about how we kind of are living in this fact-free world where, I was listening to Kellyanne Conway argue tonight with Rachel Maddow, and it was really interesting because Kellyanne Conway, I think, is Trump's White House spokesperson or one of his presidential advisors or something along that lines. She got a job basically, and and you can Google search it and look it up what the job is, but excuse me, essentially. She was arguing with Rachel Maddow tonight when Rachel Maddow was kind of bringing up these things about nuclear weapons and, how is it that the leader of the free world can talk about nuclear policy through a tweet? And Kellyanne Conway was like, oh, no, he wasn't tweeting that. That's not what he meant. Just kind of going past the facts and going past things that are actually factual within the conversation. And every time Rachel Maddow corrected her, she would just kind of brush it off and kind of, kind of pivot across the question. And I know this is pretty, common amongst politicians, and it's pretty particular amongst people who work in the political world. But at the same time, it's just like, how does this become normalized?
Well, I think one of the ways is by supporting alt media, if you will, like what you're doing, and the Young Turks and organizations that are willing to stop a minute and really look at the implications of what they're not saying. Right. And I think that that's the reason why we do this kind of media. It's because we're trying to get to more people. We're trying to turn more people on to an alternate source of media. And so you don't have to go to the CNNs and MSNBCs and that, and stuff like that, or the Fox Newses especially. You can come here. Or
and,
in addition, you can watch the mainstream, sure. And then, I mean, that's what I do. I've got my podcast lined up, and nothing's better than sitting in bed and watching the Young Turks or listening to Mike Riley now. Yeah. That book, by the way, was written in 1951. Oh, it
was written in 1951. So yeah, check 1951. That's crazy. That's it. Now, that just goes to show you people who study history really well know that it does repeat itself. Now, I'm somebody who studies history pretty well. Not to toot my own horn or anything, but history's looking like it's going to repeat itself pretty soon. I want to read off this series of tweets that was written off by this guy named Elliot Lutzik. He said, he's talking about Hannah Arendt's book. He says Hannah Arendt, in her book, The Origin of Totalitarianism, God, I can't say that word, provides a helpful guide to interpreting the language of fascist. She noted how decent liberals of the 1930s Germany would fact-check the Nazis before claims about Jews like they were meant to be factual. What they failed to understand, Arden suggests, is that Nazi Jew hating was not a statement of fact but a declaration of intent. So when someone would blame the Jews for Germany's defeat in World War I, naive people would counter by saying there is no evidence of that. What the Nazis were doing was not describing what was true, but what would have to be true to justify what they planned to do next. Did 3 million illegals cast votes in this election? Clearly not. But fact-checking is just a way of playing along in their game. That is pretty, that's a pretty good, I think, kind of interpretation of things. And if you kind of break down what really causes fascism, I mean, things from, and Donald Trump hasn't had a press conference in about 147 days or something like that. He invited the media down to his Mar-a-Lago event where they can come and drink wine and hang out with celebrities and whatnot, but everything was off the record. So this thing about the press, fascism. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, as a co-founder of a youth organization that's been around since 2002, one of the things that I think that's really scary that's going on right now is, yes, history repeats itself, but young people don't remember firsthand. So it's really scary for people my age to see people like our co-hosts who are 16 years old being exposed to these watered down kind of invitations to be patriotic, if you will, which seems to have become code for supremacist.
Yeah, and that's a very, very good point. And if you read this book I always recommended this by one of my really good mentors. I don't know him personally, but Tom Hartman. He writes a book called The Crash of 2016, and he mentions that every 80 years, history kind of repeats itself.
Listening to the Mike Riley
We'll be right back.
Podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. Follow us by visiting MikeRileyNow.com.
All right, Sean, welcome back. We hit a break right there, so I'm going to kind of continue on this conversation since it's Anything Goes Christmas special here on the Mike Riley Now podcast. That's a school bell, not a Christmas bell, so I'd have to get my sound effects together. Right? But anyway, jingle bells. Welcome back to the Mike Riley Now podcast. Make sure you
about a low-end toolkit, Mike.
Hey, man.
What was that? That was supposed to be a jingle bell?
I thought it was a bell. I thought it was a jingle bell.
No, that you've got to turn that into lemonade. What he meant to say was, "School's out, everybody. The holidays begun."
Man,
right?
I got it. Yes, I meant to turn that into lemonade. You're right.
Yeah,
I should listen to that Beyonce album more. I think she teaches you how to do that in that album.
Mm-hmm.
But make sure you log on to MikeRileyNow.com. Subscribe. Make sure you comment on Facebook. Follow us on the Facebook, the Twitters, the Instagrams, all the social media stuff. We're going to get to a little bit of news of the day, but I want to kind of finish off on this little rant I was going off about fascism a little earlier. I was talking about how in the book, The Crash of 2016, which I highly recommend. I highly recommend this book. It's very, very informative. It talks about, and I'm not big on recommending books to people, but this one's I definitely recommend. It's very historical, very informative, and it talks about how every 80 years, the generation, it takes about 80 years for like a generation to kind of die out, right? There are no more World War I veterans alive, type of thing, and even though that was 100 years ago, but it takes about every 80 years for a generation to die out, and the cause and effect of that essentially is that people kind of forget what happened, what caused what to happen. Like I said, most people my age or even a little older than me can't tell you what really caused the Great Depression. They can't tell you what caused the stock market to crash. They just know the stock market crashed. They don't know why. 80 years ago was World War II. 80 years before that was the Civil War. 80 years before that was the Revolutionary War. 80 years before that, there was all those, wars in Europe and things like that. It's because people do this thing where they have this uprising against the powers. And usually the powers are usually the aristocracy, the people who want to pull all the strings in society and control people based upon what they consider to be their power or synonymous with their power, which is their wealth, which is their money. That's usually the way things go. And in every generation we seem to progress, but it usually takes a really big ass conflict for that progression to happen. It takes a war. It takes a market crash. It takes people having to die in order for us to be like, oh, okay, we probably shouldn't operate that way. But anyway, so I mean that's a little nerve wracking within itself, to be honest with you. But who knows? And who knows what's going to happen? And a lot of people are talking about how the war drums of World War III are being beaten right now. I'm gonna stay a little optimistic about that.
You're not. Wait. Hold up. You're not in any way suggesting that Donald Trump is an aristocrat.
No, he's not an aristocrat at all.
Please. No, I think the aristocrats are. I mean, it's look at the end of Downton Abbey when all the aristocrats with money were losing their castles, and it was really sad. That's kind of I think what's happened in our country, which is why Donald Trump thug got elected.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think a lot of people too just kind of take this idea that just because you can run a business or you make a lot of money, somehow it makes you smart. I don't understand why people think having money equals intelligence. I mean, yeah, you may be smart at something, but it doesn't mean you're smart. I know plenty of rich people who are stupid as hell.
And I know plenty of rich people who are, nice as hell. I think, one of the things we have to do is stop villainizing wealth.
It's not demonizing wealth. It's demonizing what wealth does to people. I have no quarrels with wealth at all. Like I told you last week, I'm not anti-capitalist. I'm anti-free market capitalism. Mm-hmm. I don't particularly think, when people and that's the thing about people. They really think the economy is some naturally occurring thing. Like like people didn't make it up. Man made the damn economy. The economy didn't come about because, God didn't create the economy on the fifth day. It happened because we created it. And so we have to regulate it. It's simple as that. And, I have no quarrels with making money, but I have quarrels with you making all the goddamn money. And I really have quarrels with people who, take their money and put it somewhere to let it collect dust forever.
Well, that was the basis of founding Young Angels of America is, for me, coming out to the West Coast and seeing young people just not being trained at all and giving back. And I mean, we do have some really, really good billionaire philanthropists, but
absolutely
a lot of them, but we don't have enough of them.
Yeah. And
that are American.
And to me, I think the rules are just missing. We'll talk about this more in our third segment, because our third segment is more about economics. So we'll talk more about all that fun money making stuff and all the rich dad, poor dad theories and all that stuff. I know about all of them, by the way, too. I happen to be very good friends with a lot of free market capitalists, and they get on my nerves, but I love them. All right. I want to talk about this first story. This one was dated on December 20th, 2016 by the New York Times. But it's pretty worldwide. Obama bans drilling in parts of the Atlantic and the Arctic. I think Obama's really socking it to him on his way out. And good for him. Good on him for doing that. The article goes on to read, President Obama announced on Tuesday what he called a permanent ban on offshore oil and gas drilling along wide areas of the Arctic and the Atlantic seaboard as he tried to nail down an environmental legacy that cannot be quickly reversed by Donald Trump. Mr. Obama invoked an obscure provision of a 1953 law, the Intercontinental Shelf Lands Act, which he said gives him the authority to act unilaterally. While some presidents have used that law to temporarily protect smaller portions of the federal waters, Mr. Obama's declaration of permanent drilling ban on portions of the ocean floor from Virginia to Maine and along much of Alaska's coast is breaking new ground. It's never been done before, said Patrick Paternoux, a professor of environmental law at Vermont Law School. There's no case law on this. It's uncharted waters. I'm not going to sit here and say the president is the holiest of holies. I think he's done a pretty damn good job, in my personal opinion. He's done a lot of things I definitely disagree with, but I can say bravo on the president for this, and bravo, Mr. President, for that, for taking action on climate change and taking action on that.
Double bravo.
Yeah, absolutely. You go ahead and get our hand clapped there. Especially on your way out, because this is an important thing, and this is something that I don't really think the new administration is taking very seriously, especially granted the people that Donald Trump is putting in his administration, which happens to consist mostly of army generals and billionaires. That's got to tell you something. I mean, it's got to make you scratch your head.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of one time I had a very waspy boyfriend who took me to his parents' country club, and as I was walking down the hallway, I saw all the pictures of the past presidents of the club, and I said, I don't see any African American past presidents. He goes, there aren't even any Jewish past presidents. There aren't even any Catholic past presidents, and there aren't even any women. So, yeah, it's pretty much like that.
Yeah, it's pretty much like that in like the Trump kind of train, where it's like, well, I mean, he's got a few women.
Got a few women, but it looks like
they're kind of. I mean, they're straight. They're straight gangsta women, though. I mean, you put Linda McMahon as the head of the SBA. I mean, she knows how to body slam people. She runs the wrestling federation. And then, you put Betsy DeVoe, who's a staunch enemy. She considers public education her enemy for the most part. She wants to completely abolish it and privatize it. Nikki Haley, I'm still trying to figure her out for the most part.
Yeah, the optics. I'm looking at Mike's screen right now, and
right.
the optics of the cabinet are really dismal.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It looks
100%.
like something out of 19... What was that year that I didn't like that was boring? 1958.
1958. The Made Men kind of era, right? Where we go back to women in the kitchen and men, doing, going, having that bottle of
couple of scrappy women that their husbands let them be on the cabinet, and the rest of them are a bunch of.
Well, I don't know. I mean, Trump is. I'm not going to go as far as to call Trump a misogynist. He's definitely a chauvinist, but whatever. That doesn't really bother me that much. I think he's putting women in his cabinet. I mean, he has Kellyanne Conway and a couple other people, but so he might be doing that to kind of play the card. He's got that one. He's got his token in there. He's definitely got Ben Carson, and who better to play that role?
Who better to run the housing department than somebody that's actually lived in a project? I mean, that's a skill set.
Well, yeah. I don't know if anybody's going to do that anytime soon. But what really scares me is Rex Tillerson, Ryan Zinke, and it's people like that really kind of throwing me for a loop here, because Rex Tillerson may be doing what's in his best interest for ExxonMobil here pretty soon. Anyway, well, I guess we'll find that all out in due time. Trump's not the president yet, so we're going to hold our breath till that happens. All right, y'all. This is the Mike Riley Now podcast here on the Young Angels of America Network. We'll be right back.
You are listening to the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. Follow us by visiting MikeRileyNow.com.
All right, y'all, and welcome back. Welcome back to the Mike Riley Now podcast here on the Young Angels of America Network. Please follow us by visiting MikeRileyNow.com. That is what you just heard me say a second ago on that little recording thing that we So please do that. I am Mike Riley. If you've been rocking with us this long, thank you so much, and God bless you. Please make sure you subscribe on MikeRileyNow.com. Go to Young Angels of America now.org, or excuse me, Young Angels. There's no now after that. Just YoungAngelsOfAmerica.org.
Close enough.
And yeah, close enough, right? And we have the executive director of the Young Angels of America Network, Miss Brook Doherty over here. Hi.
Hey.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for joining us. Shout out to everybody. We definitely want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas coming up and a very Happy New Year. You can give the gift of the Mike Riley Now podcast to any one of your loved ones. You can simply just go on to iTunes or to Stitcher and you can gift the app. It's completely free. You can go on MikeRileyNow.com and you can learn more about that as well. And starting next year, in the new year, we're going to have some new features. We're going to launch an app called the Mike Riley Now app that you can get in your app store, whether you have an Android phone or an Apple phone. I don't know if any other phones do that, so if they do, please let me know. But you can download the Mike Riley Now app, and that's where you'll be able to listen to the show live. Once the show is live, you'll be able to be a call-in guest. So you'll be able to call into the show. We'll have a phone number, and you'll be able to call in, and we'll be able to chat about some of the topics that we're talking about, and we'll be able to bring it directly to our audience, and that's what we really want to do. So this is really important. I consider this to kind of be progressive radio or a progressive podcast, and I think that within itself is very important to kind of spread out to people and let people know, because that's the underlying essence of getting involved. You don't have to run for public office. You don't have to go out there and start preaching or lead a rally or even host a podcast, but telling other people about ways to get educated about what's going on, about the real things that are going on within our society is extremely important. And that's on you. That's a responsibility that you have. I personally, honestly believe that. So, tell people about the Mike Riley Now podcast and about other progressive radio as well. And have them chime in. I mean, I want to hear from everybody. Even though I consider this a progressive show, I do want to hear from people who have different viewpoints, different ideas. We're all Americans here. We're all in this together, no matter what. So we'll figure this out. Absolutely. So.
And Mike, I just want to say thank you for creating this show, because you've encouraged us to re-up Young Angels and create the Young Angels Network, our new website that's coming to you in January. And the Mike Riley Now podcast is our official first show that we're broadcasting. And if you're listening to this and you know one young person that may be more ill-informed than you would like, it would be great if you could just sit with them. Don't send them the link. Send them yourself and sit down with them and say, hey, I think this young guy is really interesting. I'd love to know what you think. something fun to do over the holidays when you're with your boring family.
Yes, exactly. Because we all know that once we open gifts on Christmas, the rest is just waiting for New Year's to come. But yes, when you're sitting down with your family's holidays, and thank you so much, Brooke. And I really want to give a big shout out. This kind of sounds like we're doing a telethon here, but we're really not. But I do really want to give a shout out to Young Angels of America, because they sponsored this show. They really believed in what I was doing, and Brooke really helped that out. And so, Young Angels of America is an incredible organization. It's a nonprofit organization, so
nonpartisan too.
Nonpartisan as well, but they happen to just sponsor this show, and it's one of the sponsors of the show. So I really want to thank you, Brooke, for that. And y'all, log on to youngangelsofamerica.org and please donate, drop us a line, and let us know what you think.
And Mike's going to be at the inaugural.
I am going to be at the inaugural. Yes, I cannot forget to mention that. We are going to be doing live events pretty soon. Thank you, Brooke.
With our young, amazing other documentary filmmaker who's going to be his second gun.
Yes.
Carrie Maxon.
Yeah.
They're going to be live in D.C.
We are going to be live in D.C. and we're going to be broadcasting live in D.C. as well. So we'll be Facebooking live.
Covering all this
stuff. I'm going to try to do a show from out there. We're going to just be on the ground, kind of recording the podcast, so we'll be doing it like that. Yes, I'm going to DC for the inauguration. We're going to be out there actually filming our web series that we're going to be launching pretty soon called The Uninformed States of America. And if you've ever logged on to MikeRileyNow.com, you'll see that the trailer's there. And we went to we've been shooting it for a while. It kind of started off as a documentary that I was doing over the last couple of years. I wanted to tell the story about political apathy and ignorance in the United States. And a lot of that was based upon the mayoral election that took place here in Los Angeles in 2013, when only like 5% of the city voted or something like that. Second largest city in the United States, had one of the lowest voter turnouts ever. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So I started shooting a documentary about that. Come to find out that the level of apathy and ignorance and uninformed Americans that we have in our republic is pretty catastrophic. To have Thomas Jefferson said it best, and I am paraphrasing, but Thomas Jefferson pretty much said that democracy will not work. It's impossible without active and informed citizens. It will fail. It will fall. It's impossible. Political apathy and ignorance, it brings along the stagnation of development in society. That's a scientific fact. That's why voting is compulsory in places like Australia. You have to vote. You have no other choice, because they know that when you don't, it affects things in a bad way. It's not just voting either. Voting is just one part of it, because anybody can walk into a voting booth and write Mickey Mouse on a ballot. It's about being informed on the issues. And I know politics is boring as hell, so I'm trying to figure out a way to make it more entertaining. And I don't mean like Trevor Noah, Bill Maher. I mean, Bill Maher and Trevor Noah, I got mad love for them, but I'm not talking on the level of political satire. I'm talking about being serious about it. To me, this isn't really a joke. It's not football. It's not the Kardashians. This is some serious shit, and people really need to start taking it that way.
I'm hoping that a whole bunch of, on my list for January, is getting in touch with high school teacher organizations, so this podcast can be an assignment that credit can be given for it.
Right.
Because you're young and you speak in a new kind of new inclusive way that's enough to get me off of my butt and sponsor this show with the organization. Well,
we always want to thank you for that. But yeah, it'd be cool for kids to get college credit or not high school credit for this.
Whatever,
it's kind of like a history lesson, so for sure. All right, y'all. Enough of the telethon. Make sure that you log on to MikeRileyNow.com and go ahead and put your pledge of $1,000 in. And
send. We've already funded Mike going to the inaugural. Now we're trying to buy him a mink coat.
That's right. I'm trying to get a Bentley up in here. I gotta look good while I'm doing this, y'all. So go ahead and send your check for $100,000 to Mike Riley.
Don't think so little.
Hey man, you gotta. If you gonna aim for the stars, right?
Yeah.
I know. I'm over here, Mr. Anti-Capitalist. Let's get the money. I want to play this clip real quick. We only got 10 minutes left in the show, but I want to play this clip real quick from JFK. We talked a lot about healthcare and privatization and all this other stuff a couple of weeks ago, and JFK gave this speech at Madison Square Garden way back in the 50s or the 60s, or early 60s, of course. And he was talking about how there's this scheme. I told you guys last week about how Ike Eisenhower, who was a Republican, gave this quote about these stupid people who try to take away the commons from people. Donald Trump spent most of this election. Now, I'm of the opinion Donald Trump got elected as a Republican nominee for president on Democratic principles. He ran on anti-trade. He ran on not touching Social Security private. He said it. He said, what all the Republicans are trying to do to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, I will not touch it. He said that common quote about at least 6 or 7 freaking times. He ran on the principle of not touching gay marriage and things like that. And he got elected, I think, off of that.
Well, I don't know. I don't think people that voted really understand what Republican or Democratic principles are. They understand what they want to hear.
I think a lot of people understand that Paul Ryan is trying to privatize Social Security and Medicare.
Right, and
a lot of people depend on that.
As far as what he said he was Republican, but what he won on was...
Well, nobody really knows what Donald Trump is. He flip-flops every day.
Yeah, he figured out what do people want to hear.
Yeah.
How can I package that?
Oh, yeah.
I think he went to the Obama 2008 election and said to his gophers, get me that playbook and let's update it. And he just added Twitter to it, mixed, and served it up. Yeah. And people bought it.
Yeah, exactly. Master manipulator of the media. He really is. But I want to this clip from JFK right here is where JFK is at Madison Square Garden, and he's talking about how other countries are far ahead of us when it comes to a universal healthcare program.
All of it, doctors, the choice of doctors, hospitals, from the time you're born to the time you die, are included in a government program.
He's talking about Europe.
But what we're talking about is entirely different. And I hope that while he's here, he and Dr. Spock and others who have joined us will come to see what we're trying to do. The fact of the matter is that what we are now talking about doing, most of the countries of Europe did years ago.
Years ago.
The British did it 30 years ago. We are behind every country pretty nearly in Europe in this matter of medical care for our citizens. And then those who say that this should be left to private effort. In those hospitals in New Jersey where the doctors said they wouldn't treat anyone, who paid their hospital bills through Social Security, those hospitals and every other new hospital, the American people, all of us, contribute 1/2, 1 or 2/3 for every new hospital, the national government. We pay 55% of all the research done.
Right.
We help young men become doctors.
Listen to this.
We
help
are
young men become
concerned
doctors.
with the progress of this country. And those who say that what we are now talking about spoils our great pioneer heritage should remember that the West was settled with 2 great actions by the national government.
That's right.
One, in President Lincoln's administration, when he gave a homestead to everyone who went west. And in 1862, he set aside government property to build our land-grant colleges. This cooperation between an alert and progressive citizenry and a progressive government is what has made this country great. And we shall continue as long as we have the opportunity to do so.
Now that is...
a president.
Beyond a president. That was very well put. I mean... for all those people who are so anti-government, I mean, we're the ones who pay for the medical research. We're the ones. I can't say we're the ones because I'm part of the government. You're part of the government. The government pays for that. We all pay for that. That comes out of our tax dollars. This relationship between progressive government and progressive citizen. Our concern should be for the progress of this nation. The progress of this nation is dependent on e pluribus unum. Out of one, there is many. We are all in this together. We pull together to help each other out. I heard this libertarian arguing earlier against universal health care. He says, I just don't believe in socialized medicine. He thinks he was a former Navy SEAL and he thinks we should get rid of the Veterans Department. He says, at least he was upfront about it. I know this sounds harsh, but if you just can't afford to get your shit together, then that's on you. I mean, he was 100% about it. His mantra is pretty much of the idea that, you know, I don't want to have to pay for someone else to do something or to better themselves. Excuse me, not do something, but to better themselves. I don't want to have to pay for someone who doesn't want to take care of themselves, and that includes health wise for some oddball reason.
Well, that's a libertarian, but I mean, I think one of the things that JFK was talking about with the progressive people and a progressive government, he was speaking in a pre-technology time. Like now, a lot of the, I mean, I was at a lingerie store yesterday that specializes in prosthetics, breast prosthetics, and this elderly lady who didn't speak English, was trying to leave the store with her breast prostheses, and the paperwork was so unbelievably complicated, and the ladies at the store were saying that's just, you know, you need your social security thing and you need your Medi-Cal thing, and it's very, very complicated and you don't have it right. And I thought, it's just that it's messy. I think that there's nothing wrong with the notion of socialized medicine or healthcare for everybody. It's just that I think a lot of our systems are like, I don't know, they sort of feel like a hoarder. Like they need to be cleaned. They
do need to be cleaned. And I'm not saying that a lot of our systems within government don't need to be cleaned up. They do. I mean, I was trying to help my boss out with Social Security Administration the other day. We went through hell. You know, I go through shit when I go, but when something's broken, you fix it.
Right. You don't throw it out.
You don't throw it out. You know, it's not a car. You know, this isn't, this doesn't work anymore, I'm going to go buy a new one. You know, it's not something that's disposable. Government's not a machine. It's a garden. It shouldn't be treated like a machine. You know, when I think Gavin Newsom explained this best in his book called Citizenville, where he said people treat government like a vending machine. You know, they want something, they want junk out of it, and when it doesn't, and they put their money in it to get junk out. When it doesn't work, they kick it. They get mad at it, and they walk away and replace it with something new. Where versus in this other book called The Gardens of Democracy by Eric Liu, he talks about how government should be treated like a garden. When, you know, you weed things out, you tend to your garden, you learn about the different things that are in your garden in order to make your garden better, in order to make the other flowers and other things in the garden flourish. All right, y'all, that is our show. God bless every single last one of you. God bless Brooke. God bless Charlie and Cam if you're out there. God bless every single last one of y'all for listening. And have a very Merry Christmas, a very Happy New Year.
Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah and all the other holidays y'all celebrate out there. We will see you next year. Make sure you log on to MikeRileyNow.com, YoungAngelsOfAmerica.org. And remember, democracy is not a spectator sport. Quoted from a great scholar, we are all in this together. All right, y'all. We will see you next year. All right, cheers.
You are listening to the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. Follow us by visiting MikeRileyNow.com.